Okay. Don't mind me, y'all. Just practicing my kicking form. Because at the end of the season, I might go down to Levi Stadium and try out for the 49ers because, oh boy, we need a kicker. Andres from AA Sports. Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. And for those new to my channel and my 49ers content, welcome to my channel, of course. The 49ers lost 40-34 yesterday. Just a very disappointing loss at home to end their final home game of the season. Let's talk about this. This was abysmal. In a game that meant nothing to the 49ers, already being eliminated from playoff contention following their second loss to the Rams, and then of course having no pass protection and losing against the Dolphins. They were still motivated to prove themselves in this game and offensively put their best foot forward. Even the offensive line, which has been criticized for being the weakest part of the offense for not just this season, but for a couple of years now, had a solid game despite on paper looking depleted without Trent Williams, Aaron Banks. The offense played well. Purdy had 4 touchdowns total. Ricky Pearsall had a breakout game, only for the defense to be practically non-existent and keep Detroit in the game to win it in the fourth quarter. And special teams. 3 missed kicks resulting in 7 points lost. Nothing new from CODY, PARKEY 2.0 in a game where they lost by only 6 points. Plus a holding call on a kick return, which pushed back a good return from Deebo Samuel. I mean, at this point, the special teams have been so bad to where you almost expect them to have a once-a-game blunder. And absolutely no adjustments in the secondary in the second half, or just the defense, any defensive adjustments, period, from Nick Sorensen and assistant defensive coach Brandon Staley, who looked incompetent in this game, just like they did earlier in the season against the Rams in LA and against the Cardinals, a game I got to go to in several games this year. As for Shanahan, well, not having his best season by any means as the head coach, I would argue this is the first year under his tenure where you can actually say he's had a bad coaching year. He had a good coaching performance offensively. Him and the offense were not at fault for this loss, in my opinion. The defense was the big difference. I look at how the offense performed, and I don't think Shanahan is at fault for this loss. The offense put up 28 points with Brock Purdy on the field and the play calling that Shanahan made. And then when Joshua Dobbs came in the final game, in the final minutes, Joshua Dobbs also got a touchdown. So the offense put up 34 points in total. The big difference was the defense. Granted, both defenses were bad in the first half. Just like for those who saw the first half, the defenses were just a whole lot of bad on both sides for the Lions and 49ers. But the 49ers D, outside of 2 Bosa sacks and a couple of good stops by Green and Mustafa, was non-existent. Sorensen and Staley did not adjust in the second half, while the Lions defensive coordinator did. The DC for the Lions saw how good Pearsall was in this game and circled his name on the roster list, while Sorensen and Staley clearly did not circle Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown on their roster cards in preparation for the game. That resulted in the 2 picks when the Lions defense adjusted, and I think that was the big difference. I think had the 49ers defensively adjusted, had Nick Sorensen adjusted in game and been competent to do so, I think the 49ers could have also gotten a couple of picks on Jared Goff, a guy who's been known to not be as mobile and crumble very quickly under pressure. But again, there was none of that in this game because of the poor play calling defensively. So the 49ers, in their final home game, they lost 40-34. here are my grades, my performance grades for the 49ers. Quarterbacks, because 2 quarterbacks played for the 49ers, one in the final minutes of the fourth. Quarterbacks, A-. Brock Purdy was 27 of 35. He made 27 passes on 35 attempts. Threw for 377 yards, 3 touchdowns, and had a rushing touchdown. Those are elite numbers for a quarterback in today's era of the NFL. The 2 interceptions, while not good, especially in terms of the ongoing debate of how much the 49ers should pay Purdy, yeah, definitely not good. Both were bad throws. Purdy, in the post-game press conferences, even took responsibility for it. He's like, yeah, the first interception definitely was on me. It got away from me. You know, that one was on me. He took responsibility. But both were also, I think, caused by the Lions' defense and their secondary having a pretty good year overall. And their coordinator, Aaron Glenn, making adjustments in that second half. You know, watch out for George Kittle. Watch out for Ricky Pearsall, who was the best receiver in the game. I think that was a difference. And that's where the interceptions came in. Purdy also looked to have been injured in the second sack of the game in the final minutes of the fourth quarter. This is where Josh Dobbs came in for the rest of the game. Yikers. Healthy or not, I think it is time to sit him out for the last game and have him healthy for next season, where, again, he will likely be fighting for a contract extension, assuming he won't be extended in the offseason, which obviously the latter does appear likely. But in the case it doesn't happen, he will still be under contract next season with the Niners, but he will be competing for a contract to stay with the team. As for Dobbs, the quarterback that came in for Purdy in those final minutes, 3 for 4 for 35 yards and a rushing touchdown. Solid for his brief time in the game. So with that, I think the quarterbacks had a very solid performance, A-. Running backs, B+. Isaac Guerrero had 9 carries for 34 yards in a game with play calling being mostly passes instead of running the ball. Now some people have criticized that play calling, but at the same time, frankly, that's just how the game went. Both quarterbacks, it's worth noting, Jared Goff and Brock Purdy, threw for over 300 yards, so this was definitely a shootout in the air as well. However, despite only having 34 yards on the ground, Guerrero, he did contribute well in the passing game with 4 catches for 65 yards. So again, the passing game for both teams was excellent in this game. Fullback, B+. Helped with blocking and had 1 touchdown pass for 9 yards. For his standard and based on his role in the offense, this was a great game for him. Wide receivers, A-. Ricky Pearsall had 8 catches for 141 yards and a touchdown. This was a breakout game for him. It does make you wonder how the impact he could have made earlier in the season had he been able to play, had he, of course, not been shot near the Tenderloin District in San Francisco. But overall, I think this game definitely showed this game as well as his game against the Buccaneers. I think they proved that Ricky Pearsall was definitely first-round caliber in terms of draft pick, and I think he can contribute in the future. I think he's a bright talent. As for moving on down the wide receiver list, Juwan Jennings had 7 catches for 67 yards. Isaac Guerrero, again, also helped out in the passing game, as stated earlier. And Deebo Samuel, while mostly non-existent, did have 1 touchdown pass, a toss from Purdy to him in the red zone that he took in 4 points on the board. Moving on down the grade list, tight ends. I'll give them an A. 8 catches for 112 yards for George Kittle. Once again, having a great game on primetime TV. He always does well when it's a primetime game. That's just George Kittle for you. This has been a phenomenal year for him, and hopefully there will be more to come. O-line, B+. The offensive line, despite being the weakest part of the team, as well as being injured and depleted, again, no Trent Williams. I don't recall even seeing Aaron Banks on the field either. Give them credit, they held their own well and gave Purdy solid protection, which they didn't do against Miami. They weren't as good at blocking in the run game, and I do think that's one of the reasons there were more pass calls than run calls in terms of offensive play calling. But frankly, this was more of a shootout between two quarterbacks. And they did well protecting Purdy. Again, unlike versus Miami, where I don't think they could have even stopped a beach ball coming at them. Defense. Overall, it was an F. The defense, F grade overall. This was a fracaso by the defense. And where do I start? Okay, defensive line. D. Nick Bosa, number 97, had 2 sacks and was the heart and soul of the defensive line. He was the only person to sack Goff, who is nowhere near as mobile and has often been flawed under blitzes. He was the only defensive lineman that made an impact. Outside of that, the defensive line struggled in stopping the Lions' run game, with Jahmyr Gibbs having 18 carries and 117 yards on the ground. Greg Reynolds had 7 carries for 31 yards as well. Outside of Nick Bosa, the defensive line could not stop a runny nose. They gave up 2 rushing touchdowns, including one for 30 yards. Granted, some of it was because of the play calling, not blitzing more, and only pass rushing with 4 defensive linemen. We'll talk about that in a moment. Linebackers, D-. Warner, Winters, Bethune, Flanagan Fowles, and Jalen Graham had only 7 tackles combined. And like the D-line, struggled to stop the run game as well. They are really, in terms of stopping the run game, the linebackers are really missing Dre Greenlaw. In the Warner-Greenlaw linebacker duo, Warner is great at stopping center checkdown passes, while Greenlaw would help the defensive linemen stop the run. 49ers fans cannot wait to have Greenlaw back. There were also some notable tackles missed, not just for them, but also the secondary. Speaking of which, the secondary, F. There were 1 or 2 good moments, such as the red zone stop on 4th down made by Green and Mustafa, who have been promising young rookies and prospects for the future. But outside of that, they, like the rest of the defense outside of Bosa and the 1 4th down red zone stop, were non-existent. The secondary and entire defense looked unprepared for Laporta, Williamson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. There were plays where they were left wide open and you had blown coverages, including the 4th down attempt where Sorensen called a soft zone coverage. Granted, the Lions defense wasn't good either in the first half, but at least they adjusted and played better in the second half. For the 49ers, the same could not be said. And again, we'll talk about why in a moment. Special teams, F+. I know, right? F+, weird, right? I don't think I've ever given an F+ grade on my channel before, but I am now. First time for everything. The plus is for Deebo Samuel, who has, in my opinion, found a place as a great special teams receiver on punts and kickoffs. One thing we didn't have with Ronnie Bell or even Cowing. Samuel gained 132 kick return yards. That's solid. However, one of his kick returns was called back due to a holding call. Disappointing. For some reason, the special teams on kickoffs and punt returns just can't not get a flag. And then the real failure in the F grade. Jake Moody. He missed 2 field goals when he is supposedly the guy with a stronger leg to make them even from farther out. Clearly not the case. He can't make kicks from anywhere. Along with missing 2 field goals, he also shanked an extra point attempt. He really is CODY PARKEY 2.0. Why we let Robbie Gould walk out the door is beyond me. As of right now, it is Wednesday, January 1st, New Year's Day, as of filming this video. And the 49ers have one more game in Arizona before the offseason. If Jake Moody is not released. If he is not cut from this team during the offseason and they don't bring in a new kicker, I will be very disappointed. Jake Moody is a liability. He needs to go. Coaches, D-. There were defensively, there were constant scheme and coverage breakdowns and reluctance to blitz and put 5 pass rushers on the defensive line by Nick Sorensen and Brandon Staley. On 4th down from the 4, the Lions converted the touchdown from Goff to St. Brown, where he was untouched and uncovered, with nobody in the 49ers secondary within 5 yards of him. Sorensen decided to have his defense play soft zone coverage on 4th down in the red zone. It makes no sense. It's truly mind-boggling. Blown coverages on 3rd and 4th downs, which is terrible given Campbell, the head coach for the Lions, loves to go for it on 4th downs. And again, the defense is missing tackles while trying to get back to do damage control on already blown coverages. David Lombardi, a journalist for the 49ers, I believe like San Francisco Chronicle, I don't fully know, but he posted this on Twitter midway in the 4th quarter. I want to read this one from him, as this was also something I noticed in the game. He said, with 10 minutes left in the 4th quarter, Sorensen blitzed on the 3rd down, resulting in an incomplete pass. He went back to rushing with 4 defensive linemen on the 4th down that David Campbell decided to go for with his offense, led by Jared Goff, and it resulted in a 19-yard conversion and a 1st down for the Lions. That is very questionable play calling defensively from Nick Sorensen and Brandon Staley. And I think in my opinion, tonight they coached for their jobs. The offense was rolling. They were doing great. Had they made stops and done their part in helping the defense get the Jared Goff, Laporta, St. Brown, and all those boys on the Lions offense off the field, I think the 49ers could have won this game. Remember, the offense put up 34 points in this game. That should be plenty to win if your defense plays even average or to good. They don't have to be elite. I think going forward, the game against Arizona should be the last game for Nick Sorensen. I think you got to pursue Robert Saleh and bring him back. And if he's willing to come back, yeah, you bring him back immediately. You fire Sorensen. You fire Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley, I mean, why we hired him as a defensive assistant coach, whatever, an advisor to Nick Sorensen is beyond me, given that he had a horrid, barbarian storming Rome, historic failure with the Chargers, getting 63 points dropped on him against the freaking Raiders, choking games because his defense he wouldn't adjust in the second half defensively. Then I think he blew a 34-0 lead in the playoffs against Jacksonville because, again, your defense was non-existent when you're supposed to be a defensive expert. Why we hired Brandon Staley's beyond me. And while I get that historically the 49ers have had great in-house hires as defensive coordinators, Robert Saleh, DeMeco Ryans, Nick Sorensen clearly is not the same. I think you got to find a way to bring back Saleh. And I think you let go of Nick Sorensen and Brandon Staley. If not Robert Saleh, Mike Vrabel, maybe. We'll see. But they definitely need to make a change at the defensive coordinator coaching spot. Brian Schneider, at this point, I also think is surely as good as fired, and rightfully so. It's time to have a special teams coordinator that will properly prepare the special teams and not have them constantly committing BS penalties during kick returns. And then again, along with them, Jake Moody's got to go. So 4 guys have to go the moment the offseason begins. Brian Schneider, Nick Sorensen, Brandon Staley, Jake Moody. They all should be gone. I know some fans especially for those who listen to Grant Cohn, they're immediately saying, fire Shanahan, fire this fraud. But again, I don't think he was at fault for this loss. And while I do agree that this has not been his best coaching year, I think this was his first bad coaching year for the 49ers. Given his success, I think he's earned that chance next year to bounce back. I think on a meritocratic basis, he has earned that. And again, here's why you wouldn't fire Shanahan right now. Renardo Green, Malik Mustafa, Fred Warner, Ricky Pearsall, who had a breakout game. Brock Purdy, I think, is your guy. I mean, he threw for 377 yards. He's had some great games this year. You also have Jawan Jennings. You extended Deommodore Lenoir. D. Winters is a rookie that they can develop as well. Isaac Guerrero is a fast rookie who they can who can contribute, whether it's as a running back somewhat or in the passing game. Jordan Mason, CMC. I do think this team is in much better hands than people realize. And if you fire Shanahan, it's very possible that the next coach that comes in won't want those players and will completely tear down. So the logic of fire Shanahan, just any coach with this talent could easily win the Super Bowl, I don't think is the case. Fans need to be very careful what they wish for. I can make a whole other video about that take. Regardless, final score, 40-34. The Lions win at home. The Lions win on the road. The 49ers lose their final game at home of the season. And now it's off to Arizona, where we'll see what happens. Maybe they can finish strong, or maybe they can lose. I mean, there is the aspect of, if you lose, better draft pick. So we'll see how it goes. But there definitely needs to be some retooling during the offseason, and we'll see how that goes. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. That is all for me in this video. Happy New Year's to you all. I know this was a not so positive video, but nevertheless, I'm covering the sports. I'm covering the 49ers. You got to be honest regardless. Even if you want to make this first video of the new year positive. So yeah, nevertheless though, not the end of the 49ers content. I'll try to cover during the off season. Also a good question. Should I cover the UFL, the St. Louis Battlehawks, the Birmingham Stallions, those teams? Should I cover the UFL season? Let me know in the comments. It would be very interesting. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do that, and I will gladly do so. Of course, stay tuned for more sports content as well, whether it's the Mexi's, Mexico national team, of course, the San Jose Sharks. So do feel free to leave a like and hit the subscribe button. That is all for me in this one. Thank you so much, everybody. Go Niners. Hopefully we do it next year, and I'll see you all in the next one.